Hey guys, I know you don't have this slide, but I created it just so you'd know what the cell theory is and what a cell is. The cells are dynamic living systems, and we don't think about these, but they are living organisms that move and can actually live on their own without us, but we put a whole bunch of these cells together and they become us. The theory of cells, or the cell theory, is that all living organisms are made of cells. Cells are the basic unit of life. By the way, what's the basic unit of matter? The matter would be the atoms. Remember the electrons, protons, neutrons? But the basic unit of life are cells. And all cells come from other cells. So cells don't spontaneously come from nowhere. They actually start from one thing and then move to another. In the past, they used to think that, for instance, like if you were to get rats come from leaving a blanket in the barn. So what they would do is they'd leave a blanket in the barn accidentally, they'd shake it out and find out that there were mice and rats in there. Well, we now know that they were using that for warmth, but back in the day, that's just how they thought cells came around, and now we know better. We know that something living has to give birth to something living. So it could be through spores, it could be through cells, it could be through sexual or asexual recombination. We'll talk about all those things later. We know that cells are really small. They have to be really small because if they were really big, what would happen is that they would have a hard time getting rid of waste and moving good stuff in. So we're going to do a lab soon about this, but it's basically talking about the surface area to volume ratio. So stuff can move in and out of a cell much, much quicker. If it was really big like this, waste would take a long time to leave, and good stuff would take a long time to come in, and the cell would die. So we're going to actually do some of these calculations in the next few days, or in the next lab or so, and we'll talk about it more. And I'm not going to make you responsible for any of those labs, but what do all cells have in common? Well, they are cell membranes. They're covered in that lipid bilayer. They have these things called ribosomes, which we're going to talk about later. They are little factories that make proteins. The cell membranes were those lipids that we talked about before, and they all have genetic information like nucleic acids. There are two different types of cells. There is a prokaryote. Pro means before, karyon means the nucleus. So prokaryotes have no nucleus. They're really small. They really compose of two groups, bacteria and archaea. Later this semester we're going to go in depth a little more, and then microbiology is basically all about bacteria and how they help our bodies, and then the bad culprits. We'll talk about them too. If we look at a prokaryote, we'll see that number one, the cell is small. We're gonna compare them to the next type soon. They have their DNA loose in the middle, and then they have these little things. Some of them have it to propel themselves from one area to another, and that's how they go from one area to another. They use this thing called asexual reproduction, which is one basically decides it's time to split in half, and they become two new cells. They come in different shapes and sizes. This one won't be something that we'll test you on, but just so you can get a heads up for microbiology if you end up taking it. This is called a bacilli. It kind of looks like a little sausage. These guys are called sporulli. It's got that little wiggly sort of ability. These two usually have the ability to move. So they have the ability to go from point A to point B. These cocci, the third group, these guys are really small and they're always round. Sometimes they're connected, sometimes they're just on their own, and they don't have the ability to move. They just kind of grow to where they need to be. A eukaryote, this is what we are. Eu means true and karyon means kernel, and we're talking about really the nucleus. What makes up a eukaryote are groups that we're going to discuss, like animals like us, fungus, plants, and protistas, these are typically things that are found in water. When we hear about them, we think about them giving us stomach issues and stuff like that. And we're really going to talk about them more in microbiology. Our main focus for this class is going to be animals. And if you take 181, they'll talk more about plants. Basic features of eukaryotic cells. Basically, they have a nucleus, and that's going to be their brain. It tells the cells what to do, and they give directions on protein synthesis. So the function is to store the DNA. The nucleus is going to be stored there, and it directs protein synthesis, when to make it, how much to make, and when to stop. The other things that we're going to talk about are these things called organelles. Organelles are small little things inside of a cell that do some type of work. So some will be used for recycling and some will be used for energy, and we'll talk about them in our next video. And then of course the cell membrane. All of these guys are going to have a cell membrane. This is what an animal cell looks like, and we're going to talk about some of the functions that you see here, but later we might talk about some others. Mostly we're going to stick to the ones that we need to know for this class, but in the future, if you take some more biology classes, they may bring up some things like those microtubules and things like that. Let's talk about these in our next video.